You know, a while back there was a report from the Institute for Corporate Productivity by Roger Steer, and it was also reported in the Financial Times. And the headline had Satya Nadella from Microsoft in it. It was about culture change. And it had some really interesting findings. Again, it supported a lot of the stuff we've been teaching in ProSci. And the first observation he makes is, he says, if organisations get the culture wrong, none of its other plans matter. He also suggests that our ability to change our culture is a leading indicator of future success, and he attributes that quote to Satya Nadella of Microsoft. And don't forget that the number one blocker for digital transformation, as reported by Forrester and Gartner, is culture. So he suggests that companies must constantly develop their strategies, business models and market position. Quote, significant change to any of these will require a corresponding evolution in corporate culture. And don't forget that culture is the way we think, we do things around here. So the research covered 6,000 organisations, and there was a couple of interesting findings. One was 2/3 of participants said their organisation was going through some form of culture change, but only 15% rated their efforts as highly successful. And then they suggest a few ways to develop a future-ready corporate culture, and I sort of show how they map to stuff that we teach and practice in the ProSci methodology and have done for a while. And his first suggestion is renovation, not transformation. He suggests this is about preserving the best of the company's legacy norms and fundamental values rather than complete transformation. That relates to ProSci's current transition and future states, but I would go back to the thought that without a transformation, change is just a rearrangement of the furniture. So I would say in that one we do need a transformation, but yeah, keep the best of what was there before without compromising your transformation. Number two is listen to employees. He suggests that 2/3 of successful organisations began by gathering data from the workforce and other stakeholders and how they viewed the existing culture and what they wanted the new one to be. And for change management, basically we're saying what is it that people desire, what's in it for them. It's the second element of the ADKAR model. And one way to do that is to do qualitative and quantitative surveys and end user workshops. What are their business problems and how can we solve them with reference to the new culture? The third suggestion may seem obvious to ProSci practitioners, but he says explain what is changing and why from the top, and he suggests the CEO of the organisation. Of course that relates directly to the ProSci number one finding, ProSci and most other sources, that the number one success factor for any major transformation programme is active and visible sponsorship, the ABCs of sponsorship. Active and visible, build a coalition and communicate. It goes further and says the chief executive must articulate the company's purpose and mission, why changing the culture is vital, and what it seeks to change, and he backs that up with some facts. He says in 86% of successful organisations, the chief executive met the senior leadership team first to make clear the behavioural changes that would be required. For me, that's all about active and visible executive sponsorship and building a coalition of peer sponsors. Then he suggests find the influencers and energisers and sign them up, and he suggests that more than half the successful organisations had used network analysis techniques to identify influential employees in order to enlist them for both their perspective and as champions of cultural change. And I agree with that, absolutely. And in fact that one even goes back to Everett Rogers, Diffusions of Innovation, when he says the part of the diffusion curve from about 10 to 20% is the heart of the diffusion process. After that point, it's often impossible to stop further diffusion of new ideas because of the cumulatively increasing influences upon the individual to adopt or reject an innovation, resulting from here's the kicker, activation of peer networks. Adoption takes off once interpersonal networks become active in spreading subjective evaluations of an innovation from peer to peer in the system. And then he suggests that plan how progress will be measured, monitored and reported. And he backs that up with some numbers, and he says this important step has been neglected by 90% of the organisations whose efforts to overhaul corporate culture failed. And that's absolutely part of the ProSci methodology that we teach and apply. Measurement, which comes in phase 3 of ProSci's 3-phase methodology, which is reinforcing change. And it also goes back to, if we don't know where we're going, how do we know when we get there? And it links to the 4 Ps. What's the purpose? What are we aiming for? He also makes another important point. He says don't delegate ownership of cultural change. He suggests that the chief executive must be the cultural champion, and he suggests from his research that in 80% of organisations that were successful, the chief executive was the lead architect of the change. Then his second last finding is, don't put up with leaders who resist. And ProSci would teach resistance management, which has got 3 phases: resistance prevention, proactive resistance management, and reactive resistance management. Not putting up with leaders who resist comes under step 9 of the 10-step reactive resistance management effort. What are the consequences for people who do block the change? Because after all, it's an existential question. If this culture change is crucial for the organisation, someone important, someone influential blocks it, what are you going to do? And in this research he suggests, do not put up with it. Their ability and willingness at all levels to embody the change is non-negotiables, he suggests. It may be necessary to move naysayers and blockers out of the way, even if they are at the top. His final element is, don't underestimate soft power, and he suggests organisational elements such as culture and leadership traits including empathy, deep listening and vulnerability, which are traditionally viewed as soft, are increasingly viewed as hard by senior management and stakeholders. They're hard in terms of business impact and the ability to measure them, though indicators such as employee retention, employee referrals and customer advocacy scores can help. So I always say culture eats technology for breakfast, and those are some suggestions from a 6,000 organisation research base. But for me, that all aligns completely with what we do in ProSci, what we teach and what we apply every single day. So yet again, the ProSci methodology is backed up by that, not that it needs backed up, and it's something that can, if done properly, engender, support and drive cultural change. And I'll finish by reiterating the quote at the start: if an organisation gets its culture wrong, none of its other plans matter. Culture change is hard, but by applying excellent change management, we can do that. Hope that helped.